the Soul's Conquest. Welcome everyone to the Soul's Conquest in conversation with Philip. He is an amazing friend. We have gotten to know each other recently, and I'm genuinely so excited and happy to have you here, Phil. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me come on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. You're doing some amazing work, but I won't lead into that. I want you to tell us what you're doing. So for everyone in the audience who's listening to you or watching you for the very first time, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm Phil Sipowicz, and I'm the CEO of a company called Teamwrkr. And today we focus on helping freelance professionals with their journey. And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but generally speaking, we support them. We help them to connect with each other, learn new things, and hopefully that leads to success for them. And success can mean a lot of things for people as well. So that's just a matter of working with them to figure out what their unique definition of success is. But that's really what we're focused on. And we really just started about just not quite a year ago. Prior to that, I ran my own business, and I was fortunate enough to build that company over a long period of time. And then I sold that business, and now I just really focus on sort of hopefully paying it forward and helping people who are out here creating this new world of work and helping them to be successful. So that's what I'm up to. Yeah.
You know what? That's amazing. I feel like that's why I instinctually connected with you, is because I am consciously working with people who are creating change, who are creating impact, and you're creating a platform that helps them kind of have a better understanding of how they can do that in a right way. And we even did a workshop together. Plus, you have a lot of amazing workshops that you host in the community. So I'm super excited to see the journey of Teamwrkr. But I wanted to ask you, do you want to talk about Teamwrkr today, or do you want to talk about your past companies, or a mix of both? Because
we could do both. I think they're both very related. I'm happy to share my journey along the way. It was a long one to where I made it, and how I found myself working with these professionals, freelance professionals who are out here, like I said, making all this change happen. And I think that the future of work, which is so important to people, not just from the standpoint of making money and having a living, but also to just figure out how that all goes together with what their personal goals are. And I think that the change that came about with the pandemic and with so many other economic changes that have happened, and demographic changes as well, but that's really created this whole new opportunity for people. And so that's so my journey really goes back into the early 1990s.
Wow.
That was a very different time in terms of work and what people were doing. There was not really this concept of freelancing. I guess maybe in some cases there was, but for the most part, it was very traditional workplace. Like I remember going to work every day with a suit and tie on.
Yeah.
So not fun times if you were into that. Yeah, and you had to actually go to your place of work and do things, even if you were sort of in the knowledge work space, and I just got involved in technology, really. The business that I ended up being in was one where we would go in and just on the infrastructure side. So when you think about data centers and things like that today, that's really what we did for organizations. We would go in there and help them to build them. And in those times, they weren't really called data centers. They were just infrastructure, computing infrastructure. So we learned a lot about that along the way, but my background is not in that. My background really is in economics and finance. And so I got into that. It's just a winding road, right there. Just my journey was squiggly lined right away because my background and my degree is not in anything that I end up really focusing on. So right there, I kind of feel a kindred spirit to people who are like, oh, I started doing this stuff, but I'm interested in this other stuff, and my passions lie over here. And there's just a lot of ways to sort of achieve your goals. But I ended up running a company then for about 18 years, and I learned a lot along the way. Mostly, I think I learned what not to do, which is sometimes made a lot of mistakes. That's for sure. But I learned a lot from that, and that process of just meeting people and understanding what their goals are. And then because it went on for such a long time, I was able to really see people. Some of the most gratifying part of running that company was really just to have people who maybe when they first started working with me, they were they were not married yet, they didn't have any children, let's say, or something like that, but then they went on to do all these things in life, buy a home maybe, or have build a family, things like that. And so that was really, really awesome to think that I was able to help them to do that. And then of course they helped me tremendously too. So it was a really great relationship that I built with a lot of people. And, when I left that business and that, I ended up selling the company, and that was just something that worked for me at the time. And I think that, was just a right opportunity. But what I ended up missing was sort of that connection. And I took a little time off, and I did things that I wasn't able to do when I was running a company. So I was really fortunate, but my life sort of got partitioned that way. It was like, oh, I was doing this, and then I stopped that. So it was literally one day. Imagine if I just came to you and I said, okay, well, everything you've been doing so far for 18 years, tomorrow you'll stop doing it. It's a little bit abrupt. It's a bit of an abrupt change, So it was okay. I filled the gaps in with some other things I hadn't done in a while, some travel and whatnot. But I really began then to miss that contact with people, and I stepped back and I said, how can I help people the most, and what do I really know that I could bring to them? And so, I figured out that I kind of knew things about, growing businesses, trying to pursue your passions at the same time as earning a living, and I sort of just started to investigate. This is back then. Now in about 2020, I started to investigate, geez, what are people doing? And then the pandemic hit, and all those changes, for example, the technology changes, what we're doing today. I mean, to think that we're able to communicate across many time zones and do it effectively and produce something that hopefully is helpful to people, it's unbelievable. And that was going on in 2019 and early 2020, but now it's commonplace, right? And that's an incredible change. And when we coupled that with just, I think, what is a mindset change for many people, I think we're really on the verge now of some really important structural changes when it comes to sort of the work economy. And we can certainly jump into that. I think there's some cultural differences in different countries or different regions, but for the most part, what I'm finding is that people are no longer going to just kind of go through the motions of their life. Their life. They want to live, and they want to find a way to work and live and balance that. And that's really, I think, a great opportunity for many people. So hopefully I can help them with that. That's the long story of that's the journey that I've been on.
No. It was a wonderful journey. It is a wonderful journey. And I have a couple of questions from it for you. So the very first thing is, you are currently working with freelancers, and you were speaking about how, in 2020, you were looking into it and you were seeing how people are shifting, how people are changing. Right now, in today's economy, with so many people getting laid off of work, as inflation, the dangers of inflation kind of like loom over us, how important do you think freelancers are becoming? And do you think people should pursue this, if not as their main objective, at least as a side hustle kind of a thing, where they can learn to kind of have some sort of a support system going on, where they can work on their hobbies and earn on the side? What do you think about freelancers in general, and then about this particular topic?
So I think the freelance economy, and I'll even sort of append that, I refer to sort of the freelance professional economy, and that there's a little bit of a difference there. I might even call them solopreneurs. That's another term that's out there. So I'll say I focus on solopreneurs here in this part of the conversation. I think certainly freelancers and gig economy stuff has been around for a while, and I would encourage people to do that always, because I think that allows you to, whether it's pursue your passions, learn new skills, create another income opportunity. Those are super important. So, I mean, and again, technology and the changes, I mean, everything from Instacart and Uber driving and things like that have just enabled so many people. I mean, I know people who have to commute to work, but yet they'll do Instacart driving on their way home. And it's awesome. It's great. It's another, why not? If they're commuting, they get to, they get to pay for that. But in my mind and my experience, especially coming from the technical management experience, there's no doubt that people who are running bigger businesses today are becoming more and more reliant upon the freelance professional community. And I think we first saw that happen, I think generally speaking, in the creative community, the one that you serve a lot. And I think part of that is because what happened in the creative community was that especially marketing firms were struggling to figure out how they're going to deal with, for example, the shift from traditional media to social media. From an ad spend on a television station to an ad spend on Instagram, or a boost payment or something like that. All these things, and they were trying to figure that out. And there became this whole new undercurrent of people who were saying, hey, wait a minute, I can figure this out. And there's not formal training for that, right? There's no sort of, I can't go to school. There's no Instagram school. There's no LinkedIn school.
I wish,
Well, there you go. Maybe somebody who's watching or listening to this is going to say, hey, wait a minute. I don't know how to build a school, but maybe somebody would. But, I think that economy right there of the creative community has made a transition now into people who are seeing this as their primary source of income. It is not a gig thing. It is, and I think that is one of the most interesting, fascinating things to me is to watch people who maybe the historical path was, I'm going to go work, let's say, to run with the creative side of things. Maybe they were going to go in and work in an agency for a while.
Yeah.
And learn some things. And then, they would exit that and maybe go to another agency or start their own or something like that. That was a very traditional path. What I'm finding now is people are not even working full-time at an agency. They're just going to go right into the creative arts, if you will. And then they can work with agencies and they're making money that, it's not gig money. It's real. It's money that that's their primary source of income. And I don't see that changing. In fact, I think every statistic that we see tells us that it's only going to grow really in the next 7 to 10 years. So there's a long horizon here if you look at the broader forecasting. And I think, to your point now, to come back to the economic changes that we're seeing now, I think we're still in that transition. I think we're a post-pandemic transition. I think we're, we see, I'm certainly not anything close to even a novice on supply chain issues, but people in that space are working through those issues. Well, I think people in a lot of spaces are working through how do we embrace a couple of things. One is this new economy, right? People saying, on the workforce side, people saying, I don't want to work a traditional job. So the large organizations are saying, how do we embrace that? How do we get there? I'm not sure they know how yet. And they're trying to figure it out. I also think we're going to see a shift to a lot of sort of freelance or solopreneurship in places we probably haven't seen it. And so I could look, for example, at financial management. There's no reason that someone who is working today as a financial manager couldn't do that on a freelance basis, right? It's if you think about the need, they can work remotely. They can work remotely and from their home. They can pick the hours that they do it. There's all sorts of similarities to what a creative professional's already discovered, right? And we're seeing that happen in other industries as well. I know here in the United States, we see healthcare becoming a little bit more like that, where the larger healthcare hospitals or healthcare organizations are realizing that there's a lot of career paths that people want to undertake, and they're not going to want to get in their car every day and go to a traditional 9-to-5 job. And the good news is that they don't want them to either. Now they have to figure out how to make that happen. So I know someone who's working 100% remote right now for a very large hospital here in Boston, and she does a lot of what they call patient intake. So she will work with someone to talk about what their, sort of general notes about their health concerns, things like that, relay those to the doctor, go back and forth in between, and then set up an appointment. So that right there requires this person's a nurse, has a degree in nursing. And so someone would say, well, a nursing job has to be on site. You have to take care of patients. You have to help them right next to them. No, actually you don't, because healthcare profession, that whole profession is changing now too. So there's dramatic changes. And I think we're going to see them in so many areas. And I think that represents a huge opportunity for people who want to embrace that sort of solopreneur lifestyle.
Yeah, I love that. I loved your answer a lot. Plus, it just hit me that, when you are doing freelancing, there's a lot of autonomy that you place on yourself. And it's a very important thing, something that we end up missing out a lot on when we are working in a 9-to-5, not to bash 9-to-5, but every 9-to-5 that I have worked in has sucked for me, right? Especially the last one. I think I was telling you about this yesterday, Phil, that the agency that I was working in, I used to love content writing. And then when I burnt out, I haven't written content for anyone else outside of that. But recently I've been thinking about, I want to go back into freelance writing. And with freelance writing, I don't have to kind of give a commitment. I have to just work on a couple of bunch of articles and I put it out there, which helps me sharpen up my writing for my own self, gets me a side income. Not that the income aspect of it is that important for me right now, but gets me a side income kind of a thing going on. And it gets me back to my passion to writing for other people, in service of other people. I learned so much. Like I have written about bathtubs. I have written about heat and the systems, the heater systems and the air conditioning systems. I have written about the craziest stuff right? I've written about Autobots and chatbots and stuff like that. I have written about Google, and I had no idea, right? Like at that point of time when I was going to write about all this stuff, I was just like, I need a job. This is giving me a job. I'm going to write on it. And I learned so much. And I was like, yo, I wouldn't have learned about that if I wasn't given that job to write on stuff like that. So freelance, I feel like gives so many people so much opportunity to learn more about the outside world, things that they normally wouldn't be interested in, and just go crazy. So I genuinely loved your answer a lot, Phil. And my next question to you is this. You were speaking about your journey and how you started doing something, ended up doing something else, and are now doing something completely different. My question to you is, what would your advice be to people who on take or are on the path to the same journey, right? The journey of not being on the journey they thought they would take in their minds, because that has happened to me as well. I wanted to do medical, ended up in hotel management, ended up writing content and into marketing. I'm now a coach. So it definitely didn't go the way I planned it to go. So what would your advice be to the people who are on that, like, are realizing that oftentimes things don't work out as they want them to, and they need to be able to adapt? And just because they adapt doesn't mean that they're, creating or making this huge sin about, oh my God, I invested so much in my college degree and I'm doing something completely different.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I spoke with someone the other day, and I'm hoping to, in fact, we're going to do a podcast recording because she's a fascinating person, but she is an attorney who left a very big law, job in a law firm. And, it's a fascinating story because you asked about advice. I'm not necessarily in the world of advice, but I can talk to issues such as skill development. You already said that. Think about all the, I'm splitting two things. I'll finish the story about the attorney. She's actually was commenting about how so many people who have spent so much time becoming something, maybe it's an attorney. Here in the United States, you have to do undergraduate degree, that'd be 4 years, and then law school is about 3 years here in the United States. It's a full time, so it's a 7-year commitment. And you haven't made any money yet, right? You're just starting your career, right? Yeah. You've gone to school and you paid for school or somehow gone to school for 7 years, and you haven't earned any money yet. So it's a big risk. And to think that, people then end up working the way it traditionally goes, again, here in the United States, is you'd work for a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years in a law firm, usually 3. And then they find out whether you're going to become a partner in that firm. And then you're probably working another 3 or 4 more years to figure out how much money you'll then make as a partner. You don't automatically become an equity partner at that point. There's other stuff you have to go through. And it makes sense in some levels because they want to make sure that you're committed to the firm. But now you've done 7 years of schooling, maybe another 7 or 8 years of your life has been spent getting to this point, and a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot about billable hours, for attorneys. And so it's a lot of time. And are you really happy? Are you now really happy with where you are in your life? It's the rare person, I think, that would say absolutely yes, 100%. What ends up happening is you get trapped, right? You get trapped in this, or I'm going to make all this money. And at some point, it's a big gamble, right? At some point, I'll be happy or be able to get my time back because, I'll invest all this time now, but I know when I'm X years old, I'll be able to get that time back. And I can't remember, I'm not going to get this right, but someone said to me, it's a big risk. Maybe I've heard it somewhere. It's a pretty big risk to defer your life to the end. Because what if you don't get there? Right? A lot of things happen in life. What if there's health concerns, something like that you can't execute on something? So a couple things that I think about in terms of people either, thinking through, do I become a freelancer, a solopreneur? What do I do? Part of it is understanding the why. Why would you do something? And so many people don't ask themselves that question in life. And you mentioned this actually yesterday. I'm a big believer in this. Okay, I want to start Teamwrkr. Okay, I founded Teamwrkr. Why did I do that? Because I want to help people. Okay, what can you bring to help people? What type of people, Phil? You have to get really down in the weeds, right? You have to understand more discreetly what it is you want to do. And that's really hard. That is a really, really hard thing to do. So maybe people can just start with understanding the core why. Why do they want to do this solopreneurship? What's that going to fulfill in them? And maybe it is about money. It probably should be at some point, because you are working, you get paid for your work. There's no, and I think a lot of, especially creative people, tend to shy away from that conversation. And I would say that's the first conversation they should have with themselves. It's the first one you should have, because there's nothing wrong with making money.
Yeah.
I'm constantly amazed. I speak with people and they think it's sort of this taboo subject. And I'm like, no, we really should think about that, because one day soon, if you don't think about that, you're going to have a problem, and you won't be able to go down this journey anymore. You won't be able to stay on your journey. So we have to think about that.
Yeah.
But I think once you understand that why, and you start to answer those questions, maybe the the easiest ones you can answer first, whatever they may be, then you can start to chart the path. But the thing that I've noted, especially not just in my own career, but in many other people that I'm speaking with, it's not going to be a straight line. In fact, you should probably be ready for change. I think generally speaking, you already mentioned the economy. I think the economy right now is full of change. And so to think that you could sort of insulate yourself from that change as an individual, I think it'd be really tough to do. So one is be ready for change. And I think even beyond that, I would say embrace the change. So you highlighted something a few minutes ago when you said, oh, I started in hotel management, and then I did this and I did that. And every single piece of that now is who you are, right? It's all added up. It's all added up. And so, that's why you can probably write about heating and cooling systems, right? Like, oh, I can figure this out. So one of the key things, especially for people coming into their careers, I'm specifically speaking to sort of the 20-somethings out there in the world, you first have to learn, right? So that, I think, is probably, I'd love to hear more from your audience about this, but one of the biggest gaps I'm finding for freelance professionals, especially ones who are making the decision earlier on in their careers, is they haven't had that mentoring yet. They haven't had the experience, for example, that you just said, which is, because I'm guessing somewhere along the way you had a mentor or two, and they're like, oh, you should try this, or you should go talk to this other person or whatever. And they took an interest, in you, and they probably still do take an interest in you. And I think if you don't have that as part of your career path, that's going to be a challenge. So I always encourage folks, and this is part of what we're trying to do at Teamwrkr, and I think it's a big hill to go up, but I'm happy to attack it. And that is to figure out, how do solopreneurs and other freelance professionals get the mentoring they need earlier on in their careers?
Yeah. Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. How are we go? Because I always like look at some successful businesses or things that I like myself. I'm not sure I like this very much, but I do it a fair amount. So Peloton is the bike fitness company, but I always say it certainly did not invent spin classes, but they just looked at what was really great about the spin class. And then they got rid of the things that weren't, and so from both the consumer perspective, for example, I don't want to have to get in my car and go to the spin class. So because the spin class is only at 7:00 at night. Okay, well, we can remedy that by putting the bike in your house and making our spin class available on demand. So, you can see how they took some great things and they just magnified them and they reduced the things that were negatives. But one of the things about the traditional career path, if you're fortunate enough to be in some firms that emphasize it, is mentoring. And I think that's a gap, right? That if we think about, as a freelancer, I don't get consistent mentoring. And really, as a larger employee looking to figure out how to work with freelancers, how do I bring them in and mentor them in the way that we do things, or in some sort of career path that might be helpful over the long run? So I think, even large organizations who clearly have embraced the freelance economy, and if they haven't, they are right now. They're doing it right now. They're going to hit some challenges there as they try to figure out ways, as I said, to keep the Peloton approach, keep what's really good about the traditional workforce, 9 to 5, keep what's really good about it, and let's reduce what's not good about it. Well, I think mentoring is a really good thing, built into what some good companies do. And I think that'll be a challenge for freelancers to find, and for those companies to bring to them. There's sort of a big challenge. So, I think Teamwrkr will hopefully play a role in that going forward.
Yeah, I loved your answer a lot, Phil, because the first thing that genuinely resonated with me was the talk about money. And I was recently speaking to Michael Janda, who was also on the podcast, and I was asking him about this, that I want to create some sort of a course for freelancers, right? And it was when I was planning for the workshop for Teamwrkr as well, that according to you, what is the number one thing that causes freelancers to burn out? And he was like, being underpaid, right? And I was like, ooh, I get that, because I used to feel burnt out. I used to feel those blocks, because if you imagine it as a cup and you keep giving your creativity, but you're not receiving money, which is important. It is essential. I feel like a lot of times we brush aside money as not important when it comes to creativity, when money is an important factor to play, because we have to pay bills, we have to get things done in our own house, we have to not worry about everything else that's happening inside our family, inside our realm, and focus on creativity. So I genuinely love the fact that you brought up money. And the second thing that deeply resonated with me was mentoring. Now, the reason why I found this so crucial is because a lot of freelancers, including myself, like back when I started, and I started in like 2016, 2017, I started to freelance on the side as a hobby. I was basically self-taught, right? Like no one came to teach me that this is what you're supposed to do. I was self-taught. I had to learn about SEO. I had to learn about how to write articles, right? Like the tiny format articles and the long format articles. And I had to read about all of this and learn on my own. But just imagining having a mentor figure there that could like fast track the process, because I had to go through like 15 to 20 YouTube videos back in the day and pick up one piece of advice, second piece of advice from the 50th video. Like it's crazy. But to have someone who's gone through the process and who knows that, okay, you know what, you don't have to go through 50 videos to find out things that work for you. Here are some things that work for you. Now let's get to understanding what you're having trouble facing, right? Like one really amazing piece of advice that I got was from the future, which said that, there is this term, oh, I'm forgetting the term, but basically looking at the content or type of content you want to create and copying it. Make it into a daily practice of copying a single piece of content from someone that you genuinely love reading from and copying it. And what that does is it increases your vocabulary. It changes your style into something where you get an understanding of how you can write better, what you can change, what you can leave behind. And it just changed the game for me, because that was an advice that I got in 2020, just as I was coming out of burnout from writing in the ad agency. And I was just like, oh, I wish I had this earlier on. This would have helped me tremendously in my own writing process. So yeah, I mean, I love the fact that this is a pathway that you want to take for Teamwrkr, because I can tell you right now, 5-10 years old me would have loved this. Love to have a platform like this.
Yeah, I think, another thing that I noticed about really all these communities is certainly the creative community, but anyone who is a solopreneur, a freelancer, in almost any industry has a lot of respect for other people who are also trying to do it. And I think we've been talking a lot as in the Teamwrkr community about collaboration over competition. And that is really so true. You ask about sort of the economy, I think that even very large organizations, whilst they might be competitive with each other in a marketplace, they also see where the collaboration points are for them that can be symbiotic. And I think that as freelancers, there are so many great collaboration points. And there's to just, from a mentoring standpoint, for example, maybe, and I think you're probably the kind of person who'd be happy to go mentor someone on an ongoing basis, right? And tell them, give them the little clues and shortcuts, but also, just be there for them when they're struggling with things. That's part of mentoring. And I think, and that's a little different than coaching, and I do this justice, but I was doing some mentoring for a startup community, and they actually were talking about how they're really focused on, I was focusing on mentoring, but then other people focusing on coaching. And there were some really good differences there. And I think, I think mentoring is more suggesting than it is prescriptive.
Yeah.
A coach tells you, do this to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think mentoring is more about, we need to think through this process, because it's not as if there's a clear path for everyone, and I think so. Mentoring to me is a whole new opportunity out there for, like I said, large organizations looking to build relationships with freelancers and the freelance communities that they're in, but also freelancer to freelancer, and how we build it. That goes that Peloton kind of thing, right? How do we build something? How do we build something lasting?
Yeah.
And I think it has to start, well, I think it clearly has to start with trust, that you have to trust other people in your community. I think a lot of that is built in. A lot of people come to these communities looking for help, and therefore they're already saying, I want to trust. And so if we have community builders out there say, okay, here's what we're doing to respect that trust and to enhance that trust factor, then we have a good chance to build a stronger community, and then they can go where that community wants to take it. So I'm really excited to see if we can do that, how people react to that. But I know someone like yourself, the work you do on burnout, and then your own journey, those are great examples where you can say, hey, it's a winding road. You need to be mentored along the way by people. You do something by yourself right now, but now, and in addition to your coaching business, but I think it's a great opportunity. It'll be interesting and fascinating to see how it unfolds over the course of the next, I'd say probably about 10 years, because that's kind of the time horizon I see now for this type of economy that's developing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. But I have to agree to disagree there regarding the difference between mentoring and coaching, because for me, what I think of mentoring is a bit more suggestive, whereas coaching is completely letting the other person decide. But I think the reason why there are two different opinions on mentoring and coaching is basically because there's such a fine line between both of them, that it's very easy to kind of like move between both of these both of these options. But I genuinely loved all the points that you put across, Phil.
You make a great point there about maybe they're getting blurred now. Maybe 5 years ago it was more easily differentiated, whereas now it's more blurred, just because the demand for people to have a number of different help points will come, right? That they need help in different places. So
yeah, I love that. So Phil, my next question to you is, why entrepreneurship? Why did you choose entrepreneurship as a thing that you wanted to pursue in our life? And where did it start from? Like, where did you get the first spark of like, oh, maybe I can be an entrepreneur. Maybe I can create the change that I want to see in the world.
That's a great question. I think my entrepreneurship journey began with my father. My dad actually was a doctor, but back in the day, as they say, he was able to make a living as really an independent doctor, meaning that he had his own practice and he saw patients. He was a surgeon, but he did work in his own office, and it was just him. And I watched him build a business. That's what he had to do. His business was medicine. So it was very sort of different, maybe than other businesses. You don't think of medicine as a business. We think of it more as healing. But, there are a lot of business aspects to medicine, obviously. So, I was able to watch him build that business. And I think it was a part of my upbringing, number one. And then number two, the ability to just watch him build a business that helped people. Right. I mean, it was built into that was an ends and means were built into the same thing. Right. Mm-hmm. That here he was, and his number one goal always was to help his patients, but yet he had to build a business around it to do it. So that's if your goal is to do creative work, for example, well then you're building as a freelancer, as a solopreneur, you're building a business around that. Mm-hmm. So rather than, and I think that's what I learned about entrepreneurship, and I do some investment work and whatnot now too, but when we see, as an investor, if I see someone coming in and I see them with this, we just want to build a business. Well, that might not be something investable. What's really investable is someone who says, I have this passion, I have this idea, I have something I'm pursuing, and I figured out how to build a business around it. That is the most investable type of company. Yeah. And it may not be obvious, sometimes it's as an entrepreneur, and we're doing a little bit of this with Teamwrkr right now, as we're helping the community. I'm not really sure what the business opportunity is just yet there. I think there's a few different business opportunities perhaps, but at this point in the stage of our development, it almost doesn't matter, because if we just pursue that passion and we're clear and transparent and we build the community in the right way, then the business opportunity will be revealed to us. Because that I have confidence in is, in my past, and because I do know how to build a business, right? That's something that is a little bit more mechanical than the first part is organic, and so you have to go through that process. And that is why it's so hard, though. And I would say this to many freelancers, we talked about this earlier about, well, how do you build a career in this? Or how do you chase your dreams when you need to earn a living? I would say focus first on what is it? We talked about the why, but what's the passion you have? And if you can then develop skills around that, then you'll be able to build, and other people will be able to help you to build a business around that, the mentoring aspect, so many, if you had said, oh, look, we're gonna sell books online. Well, no one ever. Why would we buy? We have bookstores everywhere. We just go. Right, oh,
Yeah.
okay, Amazon, right? I mean, or for example, to bring it even closer to the creative community. I mean, the largest content provider in the world doesn't make any of their own content. It's Facebook, right? So when you think about sort of the genius of that idea, that's a passion, right? That you can pursue. If you like creating content, great. What type of content do you want to create? How do you want to go about doing it? What is it that really, maybe like yourself, you say, well, I just wrote about HVAC systems, or I just wrote about something I never thought I'd read about. Maybe your passion is learning new things, and that is fantastic. That continues to foster that entrepreneurial spirit, because clearly as an entrepreneur, you're always learning new things. You just always are, or you'll be left.
So true.
So, and that is so, but that is something too that I noticed in my career is the pace of change. It's so quick now. The pace of change, and for many, many reasons, but you have to keep learning. And, I can tell you, even, this, if you're helping a customer with some social media presence, the Instagram algorithm is going to change on you tomorrow, right? So, there's something to be said for, learning each day and then applying those learnings. And that's a key part of entrepreneurship as well. So long answer, my father, I watched him, and then I just got into this key, thing for me is just sort of what are you passionate about, and you can learn to build a business around that if you can get some help.
Yeah. Oh, this was such a powerful answer, and I genuinely love the implication, right? Like, it's not the idea of building a business, it's the emotion behind it, right? Like the emotion behind, why am I doing this? What's my dream? What's my passion? Why is this idea of creating a business important to me, right? And that is when things start to fall into place. I love that. My question to you is this: you are mentioning why, you are mentioning the passion behind creating Teamwrkr as a platform for freelancers to come in and to learn and have a community. What do you hope that they will achieve once they're a part of your community after a particular period of time, maybe a week, a month, and year from now? What do you think that you wish that they achieve from the community?
Well, you put some timelines around it. I think I'll start with that. I think that it's because of the evolving nature of solopreneurship and freelance professionalship, if you will. We're looking at a multiple year timeline in terms of what people could get out of it. I often say you get out of life what you put into life, right? So I don't dictate for example, in our Slack platform now, I don't dictate what people talk about in there. It's up to them to generate the conversation. And I can tell you that it's unbelievable what people will talk about, ranging from mental health issues to, what billing system should I use? Things like that.
Yeah.
So there's such a wide variety of needs that I know that I can't think of all of them and then put a big list together and put them out there for people. And by the way, other people have done that. The thing that I think is lacking in many other communities, and I'll start with sort of some of the major job boards, I'll call them, Fiverr, Upwork, those types of things. Those are really competitive in my mind, and they're great, and they may work for people. Well, I don't think they're great, but for some people they are, and that's wonderful. Those are obviously huge businesses. They've done a tremendous job of building them. But there's a gap, I think, between just going out and getting that job, and to be honest, that's what those are for, to get a job, versus building your future. And I think it requires a community to help you build your future. And I think that as I said earlier, I think we're going to see a lot of people outside of the creative space coming into the freelance community. And that'll just broaden it and get a lot of other different ideas. And I could conceive of, we've already mentioned attorneys being in those types of communities. They're going to need help from creatives, right? So you can see where there's these inter-community and also intra-community, right? If I want to talk to other creatives, I can do that. If I want to talk to people from outside of that community, I can do that. But we're all sort of under this umbrella of building our futures. And I think that's what's so exciting. It is emotional. Anybody who ignores that, I think, is just, they probably wouldn't understand entrepreneurship. They wouldn't understand, being a freelancer. I mean, part of this is, well, I heard Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, say something one time, and it's really stuck with me. He was talking about writing. and he forced himself. He's a comedian, and you know, I can only imagine how difficult it is. You think about telling one joke, you know, in front of people and see if they laugh.
Yeah.
Imagine being on stage for an hour to an hour and a half.
Damn, yeah.
He actually said, he says, anybody can do 5 to 10 minutes, any low level comedian, if you will. I mean, starting out, you can do that. Working up to 45 minutes, that's another thing. But the real hour and 15 to hour and a half long, just you on the stage, that's the king. That's the one. That's the highest level that you can get to.
Yeah.
And I was wondering about that. And he was talking about how he got to that point. He said he writes every day, every single day. And he forced himself to sit down and do it. So you think that someone maybe is just naturally talented at something. Well, maybe he's just fun. Maybe Jason was just a funny guy that it comes to him easily. It doesn't. He has to work at it. It doesn't come like that. And so he actually said, think about it as a writer. He says, you know, whether you're writing and I extended this a little bit, if you're writing a joke, or I can see it being a blog post, I can see it being a book, anything you sit down to write, that's a horribly challenging thing to do. It's horribly difficult.
I know. Damn, yeah.
You need to sit down and you start with nothing. Nothing is on that page or on that screen in front of you, and you're about to create something.
Yeah.
And now that's true too, though, of someone writing computer code, because they sit down and it's just a flashing cursor. There's nothing there yet. They have to do something, right? Yeah. So it takes that first thing. So we talk about what we want to build or what people can get from it. First of all, I see an expanding community where you're going to get connection to other people who are going through a lot of the same problems or challenges. And some of them, we talk about mentoring, some of them will be willing to mentor and help. And then another aspect of what certainly I do envision long run, something that's a bit more peer-to-peer than it is marketplace. Okay. I'm a big fan of open source software. So I think there's a great opportunity out here to build something where freelancers are fostering other freelancers' careers. And so the mentorship or job opportunities, for example, we talked about collaborating versus being competitive. I can only envision that the opportunities for freelance professionals down the road are going to be bigger than they are today. That's just what the forecast is in any economy you look at, any country's economy, the world economy. So how do we embrace that? How do we do that? How do we prepare that workforce, if you will? How do we get the mentoring they need? How do we get them the skills they need? Well, it has to start first, I think, with them talking to each other. And that's what we're building right now. So where it goes from here, I think there's a lot of opportunity, whether it's in mentorship, whether it's in job opportunities and income earning. Well, I can tell you what I know I won't do, or, at Teamwrkr, we don't want to do is to just go out and sort of digitize paper. I mean, that's kind of already been done, right? If you're looking for platforms for billing, or you're looking for, that may be a need somewhere, but there's a lot of people who've done a really great job of that. And we're also, I'm not interested in building a marketplace, where there's strict buyers and sellers. I think ultimately there will be a bit of that in terms of if there's job opportunities that people can share and collaborate. Yeah. But I could envision a time when someone like yourself, it says, look, I don't have the skills to do this, but I'd like to learn some of those skills. Is anybody else out there willing to take this job on and mentor me and train me a little bit and show me what you're doing? Why wouldn't it, right? Why wouldn't someone do that? So right now, there's probably a little bit too much friction out there to have that happen easily, but we know technology and some systems out there can help to reduce the friction. Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunities. So there's just some of them that we're looking at. Yeah.
Ooh, I love that answer a lot, Phil, especially. Okay, something that resonated with me that you were mentioning earlier was Jerry Seinfeld writing stuff every day, right? And that cursor on your screen, a lot of times it has happened that you sit down with an idea in your mind and you look at your screen and it's blank, and then your mind goes blank and it's just like, what was I supposed to do? Yeah, right. Like, why can't this just transfer into the screen telepathically? Like, why should I sit down and write? And the essence of it is to express yourself and to build and to edit and create, but it is very difficult to create. So I just wanted to say a shout out to all the creative people out there that you're doing an amazing job, right? Even if you're writing one sentence and it seems very crappy to you and you're like, no one in the history of writing has ever written such a bad sentence, let me tell you, I have written stuff like that and it's out
Oh,
there.
believe you me, I have a computer hard drive full of bad sentences right on my machine right here. Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, people need to step back and go, yeah, and that was that quote. I'm butchering the quote, but Seinfeld says something to the extent of, you're about to do a horribly difficult thing. And so before you enter that, just know that you're going to do that. And then at some point, reward yourself for doing that.
Yeah.
And that's a key thing there. I'll have to, it might have been a podcast. I think it might have been Tim Ferriss has a very popular podcast. He might have been the gentleman who interviewed Jerry Seinfeld there, and we can maybe use your show notes or something to link to that one. But it's a really, really powerful comment. And to think that someone who is clearly at the top of a creative art talks about how horribly difficult it is to do it, that just shows you, it should inspire you though, right? That there's that blank screen. Just take 15 minutes or whatever it is and write anything.
Yeah.
The wonderful thing about digital is that you can keep it forever. Great, there it is. And it might be the worst sentence ever written. Yeah. And it might turn into one of the best things you've ever written ultimately, right? You don't know that. Yeah. So put it there, put it down on the screen. Or maybe you like to journal in I like real paper sometimes for journaling. Keep it, find a way to look back at it. And I think that pays a lot of dividends. So yeah, shout out to all the creatives, whether you're doing blog posts, whether you're creating an Instagram, post for someone with an awesome, look and feel to an awesome aesthetic to it, whether you're writing computer code today, whether you're imagining a new contract for your customer, right? An attorney has to sit there. They might know the law, but wow, we're encountering something, creating something so new. We have to think of a new way to write all this down and make sure that the law preserves what they're doing. I mean, that's creative as well. So I'm all about that. Absolutely. Yeah. Shout out.
Yeah, for sure. And I genuinely love the work that you're doing, because it just reminded me of this mastermind I was doing at the beginning of this year. And the intention of the mastermind was that this quote, I don't remember who said it, but there was this quote that goes that you are the sum total of the 5 people you spend time with, right? And you are creating the space that is the sum total of all the amazing human beings out there. And when you are in the space of people who are kind of like at a high thinking point, I like to call it high vibration, automatically you kind of get into that vibration, right? Like they're calling out to you, but they're not forcing you in there. But you automatically kind of start to be like, oh, let me get there. Let me see what it's like, what the view is like from up there. And when you get there, they're like, all right, amazing, you're here. Let's go higher, right? And so it's amazing the work that you're doing. I'm genuinely inspired by it.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And this, we're so happy to have people like you in the community, I mean, and also, you ask what people might get out of this. I mean, certainly connections to people who are focused on things like burnout and preventing it. I thought a lot about that. If I could mention this sort of some of the 5 people you're hanging around with, I think that, someone said you're some of your 5 best friends, but remember, I think it's more like, I like your point, like the 5 people you're spending more time with now, right? Because maybe sometimes you're the best friend, but you haven't seen them in a while. So we'll go. I like your wording. Yeah. But I think that if I said, geez, I was just starting out on my freelance journey, it would be great to have someone in my corner saying, well, you should be careful of burning out, because it's just you right now. And it's going to be hard to sustain that if you continuously do things that are negative for your own mental health or emotional health. So that is not something, I can assure you, that is not something that is being done for, or has been done historically for entrepreneurs. That it's more of just go, and if you can't handle it, I mean, it's really, really a challenge. So you think about that. It's great to have someone who, this is how you can sell better. Here's how you can build this part of your business better. Here's a legal aspect, or here's the burnout problem you may encounter. If we were to pull this, so like you said, you're not in a community, you can be the sum total of many more than just 5. You're getting a lot more.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. The reason why I joined your community was because, we were talking about the blank screen in front of us. That screen can be very difficult for a person who's just left a 9-to-5 and decided to freelance for the very first time. And it can be just as painful to someone who's been writing for a very long time and can't get a single sentence out, right? And the effect of both of those issues affect a person in a very different way. So I was like, I genuinely wish for someone, because I was telling this to you yesterday and our community yesterday, that when I was burning out, I had no idea what burnout was. Like, I had no idea what to search on Google, right? Like, I was like, how do you get out of anxiety? Well, there were general tips, but I had no idea what was happening in me. I was just like this chaotic being at a very low energy, and I was just frustrated, and all those emotions were bottled up, ready to kind of burst open, and I was just melting down just as Christmas came around, which is not a good vibe to be in during the holiday season.
Right. Stressful enough as it is, right? Right. Don't need to be burning out. Yeah, right. Yeah. But see, the resources were not available to you, right? And I think that if you were maybe working in a traditional 9-to-5, someone might have been saying to you, "Oh, I see something going on. Maybe we can help you." Whereas I think this sort of lonely life of the freelancer, solopreneur, we have to remedy that. There's ways. We're going to make it happen. I feel confident that we can make that happen, because we're not, there's a lot of, we're not, there's some people building ships to go to Mars. I'm not that smart. I won't be able to do that. But there are definitely people out here who can help me to build systems to help people like yourself in terms of that, of that problem you had for a while there. So I'm excited to do it and glad to have someone like you on board.
Yeah. Comes back to collaboration of it all, right? Like, you can't do it alone, and you don't have to do it alone. There are other people who can help you in that journey, and it becomes so much more greater than what you ever thought it could be. So love that. So Phil, my next question to you is this: what were the obstacles that you faced in the beginning of your journey as an entrepreneur, and what were the solutions that you came up with? Because I remember you mentioning that you have now a clear idea of what you shouldn't be doing after all those years of being an entrepreneur and working in the job. So what were some of the obstacles that you faced and the solutions that you came up with to overcome them?
I think one of the biggest obstacles that anyone faces who's trying to build something is what we talked about a few minutes ago, about this sort of blank page, and overcoming that is a really, really big deal. So I think the first thing to do is just understand you're going to encounter that. I think that in some ways falls into the bucket of you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's a very dangerous bucket. And so the first thing is to understand that you are about to do something that's difficult. Prepare yourself for that. Prepare yourself for a longer journey than you think it might take, because that's another thing I learned along the way, is that time horizons are all relative to someone, right? And so there's always someone who's like, "Oh, I have to get this done tomorrow." But at the end of it all, most people who you'll need to get help from, and we'll talk about that momentarily, but their time horizon is not going to be your time horizon. It's very rare that they'll be able to turn it around like you want them to. So as an entrepreneur, one is just sort of know that you don't know a lot of stuff, that you're going to start with this blank slate. And don't be afraid of that, because then the answer to those questions are, one is to jump in and do stuff. And that, you said that earlier, we'll just write something. Well, in this case, as an entrepreneur, you may not have, for example, I might not have the exact product or solution that I think Teamwrkr is going to be bringing to market today. In fact, I would argue, some of the biggest companies in the world don't have their product or solution nailed down exactly. I mean, it's a rare company. I mean, look, even Coca-Cola changes the formula every once in a while, and they have to change it back, right? I mean, there's this sort of constant change you're going to be involved with. So I wouldn't worry about trying to create the best thing right away. You have to create something right away, and then have the, how do I put it best, have the strength to bring that to other people and show them. And strength means they might not like it, and you've just spent time and energy and maybe a lot of it producing something, and people are going to go very quickly, "Oh, I don't like it." So your next question then is, why don't you like it? What about it don't you like? Because I spent a lot of time in my life in sales, and someone once told me, it's great, in sales, we always want people to say yes, right? Because that means they're going to buy whatever we're selling. But the second thing we want them to say is no, because it allows us to figure out how we will get to yes. That's actually a book.
I've read a bit of that book, not the entirety of it, but I have read a bit of the book. And there's 1,000 sales approaches and things like that. It's more, in my opinion, on those things is so you can take from them and build your own approach to sales or marketing or things like that. But generally speaking, as an entrepreneur,
you are going to have people say no to you very, very often. And you should see that as an opportunity to learn and to build a better product or solution. So if I said to you, oh, hey, you know, I'm thinking about doing this mentoring program, and you say, no, I don't think that's very good, Phil. My next question is, gee, well, what about my mentoring program don't you like?
Yeah.
And you would say, because you had a reaction right away, you'd probably be able to give me 3 or 4 things. You'd say, well, it's this and this, and I've learned this. And all of a sudden, now you're just building my product for me. You're building my solution for me.
Yeah.
And so, one, as an entrepreneur, don't be afraid of the blank canvas, the blank screen. Get something on it. Understand that you don't know a lot of things. And that's okay, because, and I say this a lot too, you know, most of life, a lot of young people especially think that everyone's looking at them. Even when you're a teenager, you think everyone's looking at you. And you come to realize that really they're worried about you looking at them more than they are looking at you.
So
right?
true. Yeah.
Right? You're like, oh, everyone's looking at me because you're like 14 years old or something, and you have, you know, you're a teenager, you're sensitive to these things, and we all are. But in life, everyone's really the star of their own show. And that's great. You should be. It's perfect. It's no doubt. So realize that when you bring something to someone like, no, I don't really like that. They're not going home that night going, oh, that Phil, he's dumb, or he's whatever. No, they're not thinking about that at all. They might actually look back and say, that was an interesting conversation. What Phil's going to do with that? Yeah. Huh. And you know, and if they don't, that's okay too. But they're certainly not fixated on your success or failure. They're really focused on their success or failure. So anytime that you can get someone to give you feedback, it's good feedback. Anytime they say they don't like it, that's probably mentioning what I learned and what I know and what I don't know and how I failed. You know, that's probably one of the biggest things. When I first started out, I wanted people to like everything I showed them. And now I think I've learned they won't. And so it's better to embrace the negative, right? Yeah. The feedback that's not positive, and learn from that and incorporate, because if they say something and 2 or 3 people say that there's something that they don't like about your solution, then boy, you can fix that and really answer their problems, and then they're going to become fans. You know? So those are things that I think that jump out along the journey. Even as a solopreneur, you're going to get a lot of no's, you know, and you have to embrace that and just see that as really positive. I'll finish the thought there with the last part about the sales process. We love yeses. The second thing we want to hear is a no. And what's the thing we don't want to hear? Well, we don't want to hear silence. Yeah. Because that implies ambivalence, right? And that's nothing you can do about ambivalence. I think that's probably someone once said the opposite of love is not hate, it's ambivalence. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think that's very true in business, right? And whatever you're building. So if people don't have a reaction at all to what you're showing them, you're really not onto something. That's okay. Take that as feedback as well, but strive to get no's, and the occasional yes will come to you. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, I love this a lot, because number one, what you were mentioning, basically progress over perfection, right? That was something that my coach Preston Smiles told in a 5-day challenge that I was a part of. And I was just like, wow, okay, you know, that was the thing that shifted me. I was telling you earlier that I was a perfectionist and I would redo the entire podcast episode from the get-go, because I was like, I can't bear why, how, you know. And it's not like I hadn't learned editing software. I had, but I was just like, everything has to be perfect. But then I realized there is no perfection. Like, perfection is a concept that we chase, when in reality, perfection keeps changing every second. Right? What you wrote now might not be viable the very next minute.
Right. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. So embracing that. I love that one. That's a great one. Perfection is going to be different a minute from now. Yeah. So don't chase that, you know. And I also think that, you know, we can think of some of the greatest scenes from movies are the outtakes, you know, where there are funny things that happen. And we talk about that in the creative space, talk about that as B-roll, right? A lot of times it's B-roll. It's like, oh, and sometimes the B-roll is actually the A-roll, right? Like, it becomes like the best thing. It's like, wow, we took, I was talking to someone who was a filmmaker, and I don't know anything. He's actually done a lot of work, Hollywood and major motion pictures back in the 1980s, and filmed a lot of like TV shows, like stuff you would know. And I was talking about it, and first he said a couple things. He said, well, the number one thing is just don't worry about perfection. He said that because, you know, we can always take care of it on the editing floor, right? And then it's going to come out. They don't film it. It's fascinating to me. you don't film a movie like in the way that it shows up on the screen, right? If we're going to do a bunch of scenes in a restaurant, we're going to do all the scenes in the restaurant at one time, and then we're going to move on to the scenes that are at the school, and then we're going to move on to the scenes that are at the parking lot, And so it's all, to the actors and the filmmakers, it's all disjointed, right? So the editors put it all together and make a story out of it, right? But but what he told me about was something super fascinating, because he was talking about doing some work with students actually at a college he was teaching at, university he was teaching at. And this is back in the early days where phones did not have a lot of face on them to record. But it's like a film class with students with their phone. They had to make movies on their phone. Each week was a different genre. So one was a love story, and one was a science fiction, and one would be drama, and one would be like all these other things, fantasy, and all these different things. So each week and they came back with some incredible stuff. They had like 30 seconds of film, and they got friends of theirs to make scores, music for them, and things like that. It was incredible things they did. But the B-roll stuff was they all came back and they said, we would just shoot certain things not knowing if it was going to be any good. And then the hard part for them was they couldn't keep it on their phone very long because they didn't have enough space. It's like, I have to get rid of it. But shooting B-roll, or back to our point about writing things down and just hanging on to that. Like I said, when you see a really good Instagram post, oftentimes it has B-roll. And you're like, wow, there were 12 seconds here, but only maybe 6 of it was the actual speaker. Fascinating. How did they capture my attention with something that was, was maybe just a static, we're talking about pizza. I love pizza. Okay, great. We'll show the pizza. Now show Phil again. Okay, great. But the pizza was B-roll. It was just, we filmed the pizza for 3 seconds.
Yeah. Ooh,
fascinating work. So your B-roll.
Yeah.
So that is something I think we see that a lot, to even go one more example of that, Amazon. Amazon's core business is not necessarily selling you stuff. Delivering in 14 seconds. I don't know what it's like in your part of the world, but I can order something today. I literally could order something today from Amazon and have it delivered this afternoon. And then if I'm in the city of Boston, I can get it where I live. 2 hours. 2 hours sometimes. It's crazy. It's crazy. But that's not their core business. Their core business, actually, the B-roll for Amazon is Amazon Web Services, their technology side, computing services. A lot of people don't know that, but they make it. If you looked at their financials, they make a ton of money off of that. And it just was something that they were like, we have excess capacity. We might as well make something for other people to use. Okay, great. And they did, and now it's giant. So that was their B-roll. That was their B-roll. So, I think it's fascinating. Yeah,
and it reminded me of this thing that I was watching. Are you aware of the show, The Big Bang Theory?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I was seeing that the very first pilot that they had made, it sucked, right? Like, it was very badly written. Sheldon's character was kind of like a mixed match of a lot of different things. The Penny in that show was a different actress and was extremely rude. And basically, when they showed that pilot to TV producers, to audiences, all they got were big no's, right? Like, no. And what they did was something what you were speaking about earlier was, they took in those no's, asked them why this sucked, and then they shifted it and changed it until it became a big yes from everyone around the world. Like, people watch it.
Right.
Crazy.
Right.
Yeah. And I was just like, that is what feedback needs to be. Like, I feel like I took feedback and criticism to my heart right off the bat when I started out. Right. Like, because I didn't know any better, because I was putting my heart out there, and someone's saying like, your heart is disgusting, I don't like it. That's what I thought a no meant, right? Like, a no meant myself, a part of me is bad.
Brutal, huh? Brutal. Well, yeah, I mean, people, it happens all the time in so many different professions that, rejection is, and that's really what that is. It feels like they're rejecting you as an individual. And that is something, to wrap up our conversation about becoming an entrepreneur or a freelancer or a solopreneur. And I'm sorry, I keep using all those terms interchangeably. Maybe I should just call them a founder.
Yeah.
You're a founder, no matter whether you're growing a giant company or whether you're just doing your own thing, you're still a founder, And so as a founder, people are not rejecting you. They may reject an idea you have, but remember, you probably have thousands of ideas, right? And as a writer, you're paid to have ideas, right? So not all of them are going to be good, right? And so that goes back to Jerry Seinfeld. The terribly difficult thing you have to do is write stuff down. And then, he mentioned that a great example is, imagine going on stage and telling a joke. And this is a great skill to develop, I think. And I think it happens to really good entrepreneurs and founders, and not so. And I think people who fail at some things don't embrace this, which is to take that feedback. And Jerry Seinfeld was talking about how you go up on stage, and he's able now in his career to do the bit or do the sketch or do the joke, but be part of the audience at the same time and watch what the audience is doing and how they're reacting. But it's fascinating. Right? Can you develop that? Some people call it the third eye or something like that, right? Can you see the scene you're in and what's happening as a dispassionate, guest to it? And I think if you can do that in your career, that's a tremendous advantage. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And I don't know of too many people who can really do that. Obviously, that's why he's one of the top. Obviously, he's made literally millions of dollars in his career, but he also is one of the top. He still goes back and, he had a TV show and he gave that up.
Yeah.
Right? He gave that up, right? So why would you do that? And what was his passion? He does stand-up comedy now. Again, he's gone back to that because he enjoys that. But that's a difficult thing to do. But his ability to take feedback, even in the moment, and say, okay, that joke, imagine that now you're doing an hour and a half long stand-up routine and you're analyzing in that moment, like, did that joke work? Did that bit work? Did the audience, what's been the energy from my audience now in that moment? And remember that and take that feedback either in that show itself or in the next one and use that. That's an unbelievable skill. And I think that is something that people who are founders would be good things to develop, even a little bit of it. I'm not saying you're ever going to get to like Jerry Seinfeld level. That's an incredible skill, but just to have a little bit of it. And then the last part about that is humbling, right? It's going to humble you. It's always going to humble you. You're going to be constantly humbled, and that's okay. That's okay. You're not, in fact, that's probably a key thing, right? Yeah. So
I love it. Seriously, this has been such an interesting conversation, and there's so much to take away from it. So I know that a lot of people are going to resonate very deeply with this, and whoever does, please check out Teamwrkr. I'll be adding links to the community and how they can reach out to you as well, and genuinely join the community, because if you could have heard in the very beginning of this conversation, there were a few message alerts that I was getting, and that was because I was in the Slack of Teamwrkr, and I was getting notifications. I was like, okay, yeah, some stuff is happening, and I'm glad that it's happening right now.
Stuff's happening right now. It's in real time. Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I think we said before, we're in 17 or so time zones now. So I can go to sleep and wake up, and there's stuff happened overnight. So it's great. It's great. I love the vibe. Yeah.
For sure. So I want to ask you this: as an entrepreneur, right now, as you're building Teamwrkr up, what are some of your spiritual routines that you have to kind of balance your work life and your personal life?
So a couple things. One is I'm a big believer in early morning rituals. And I don't know, some people stay up late, and that's fine too. But for me, I'm more of a morning person. And here right now, actually, so I'm in Boston, and so we're in the longest days of the year now. So the sun is actually up by before 5 o'clock in the morning. And I know some creatives are just going to bed at that hour, but that's early. That's quite early, but not necessarily up that early. But I believe in routine and rituals. So one is I like to do sort of inspirational reading in the mornings. There's a lot of great stuff out there. I'm a big believer in reading philosophy, and you can find whatever philosophy is your jam at that moment. But I'm not talking about spending hours reading, maybe 10 minutes or less. Sometimes it's 5. So that's an important sort of routine, and some of it is connected to religion, some of it is connected to pure philosophy, some of it is it's other things. So it's fascinating for me to leverage, if you will, what is probably thousands of years of thinking and writing in my own sort of short time on the planet. I hope I make it to 100 years, but much beyond that probably won't. So that's a routine I think I would encourage. But whether you do it in the morning or in the evening or whatever, I find a lot of inspiration from that. The other thing I find, sort of from a spiritual standpoint, I'm not very good at this, but I think I would encourage people to take a look at meditation. I'm not very good at it, honestly, and I've tried. I know they say you practice it, much like doctors practice medicine. That always makes me nervous.
Yeah.
I want a doctor who's not practicing anymore. I want a doctor who's really good at what she's doing. So, oh gosh, you're not practicing on me right now. It's just a term. Relax. But I think, the need to, I listen to podcasts. I listen to, other people out there who are, and there's many of them, you can find them. But I think if you set aside time each day to do some reading, do some writing, and do some thinking, those are probably really good practices. It's very challenging because the world is noisy.
Yeah.
And I know that even, some people talk about the chattering that's in your own head as well, right? So we talk about meditation. Maybe it's not even meditation, maybe it's sort of conscious attention. I heard something the other day that I thought was very good. They said, maybe someday you can't quiet your mind. So maybe you can actually put your attention on that bird that's chirping. Or so what? So someone's they're doing construction on the street. Fine, put your attention on the jackhammer for a minute. Just attention to that jackhammer. What is going on? That's a loud noise. Oh, yeah, what kind of noise? Well, it's kind of chattering noise. So anything like that allows you to get focused attention. But I think whether it's the morning, the evening, whenever your day starts, I think it's very important to do those things first, because if you don't, then I'm going to guess that you won't do them.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can go very long without filling your own energy tank up. And so to tie that back, we've talked about how the journey you're going on as a founder is probably a long one. So, and there'll be a lot of people in and out of it, but it's your journey and you need to stay on that path.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to go as far as you can without some of those routines. So that's just some general ideas. I know lots of people do those types of things, but I think a lot of people do them because they work.
Yeah. Yeah. True. I love that a lot. Like meditation, especially what you were speaking about, right? Like meditation, I feel is something what you said. It is not quietening your mind. It is kind of bringing awareness to your own self, like conscious awareness to where you are, what is going on. Like sometimes listening to that chirping is powerful, right? Like that's what I tend to do. When I meditate, I listen to myself. I'm like, what's going on inside there? Right? It keeps chattering all day long. What's going on? Let me shift that attention to my own space, my own listen to my internal dialogue, if you will. So I love that a lot. My next question to you is this: what has been your soul's conquest, and what is your current soul's conquest?
Well, I'll start with the second one first. My current soul's conquest is to take some of the accumulated learnings that I have over my career and pay them forward to other people.
I love that.
And so that's part of what Teamwrkr is about, a big part of it. I think there's a lot of bits and pieces that you gather along the way. And what I've noticed is sort of, someone once said this to me, someone who worked with me and for me for a long time. And they said, you know what, everyone sits down at the table together and we put stuff on the table and we take stuff away with us. And it's what's left there, that's the value that we created. And I think that's a great example of my soul's conquest. I love that question. Right now, I want to make sure that when I stand up away from this table of life, that I've left a lot there. For people to grab and to use on their own. So I was doing some of that in my own sort of coaching and consulting business, and I found that it wasn't scalable to the level that I wanted to get it to. So here I am with Teamwrkr, and hopefully we'll see how that goes.
I love that. Wait, I should have asked this question to you before. How did you come up with the name Teamwrkr?
So somewhat of a little known fact. I have my background blurred right now, but I have a bunch of pictures of, and actually a football jersey, American football jersey. So I'm a coach of teams. I've coached a lot of individuals in teams, American football. I'm also a track and field coach, and so I just find that the team concept is so important. And even if you're a founder and an individual, solopreneur, in the word solopreneur, it's kind of oxymoronic, right? Solo, alone, but this preneurship means you need help along the way. You need to build some kind of team around you. So Teamwrkr, to me, even our little logo, it's sort of a connections between hubs, And so we may at times be alone and solitary and doing that deep work and things like that. And we all do that. But I think that ultimately, we're workers, but we're part of a team. And that's why I kind of came.
I love that.
Or like to be part of a team. I don't want to be alone. I want to be part of a team. I want to grow a team. And ultimately, I like to coach teams. So wherever I can help to coach that, I will try to do that.
I love that a lot. I love the concept behind it, Phil. My next question to you is this. What is something that has recently happened in your life that has created a lot of impact in it?
I think the Teamwrkr community, and in particular, what people share in that community, has had a lot of impact on me. I am constantly amazed in the short amount of time that we've been doing this, with the amount of trust that people have built up in each other. And right now, like for example, if I look at the Slack community that we're running, there are some very intimate conversations that are going on in the public sphere. I know they're also going on. Well, I think they're going on in the DMs. We know people send DMs, but just the fact, the impact that's had on me is that, there are people out there going through a lot of the same very difficult things. And what I'm seeing is that there's not only a willingness, but an ability to help each other with them. And that's amazing to me. It's been really humbling to think that basically with a few clicks of a mouse on a screen and then a few Instagram posts, we've been able to build a community.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's, so what's going on in that right now is humbling, and it's interesting, and it's impactful on me. And so I know that we've got a lot of great work that we can go do now.
Yeah, I love that a lot, because just a little known fact to all you guys, I have tried to build communities and have failed miserably. I've done that 3 to 4 times. It hasn't worked out, no matter how much I have the why in mind. How am I going to do all the things that I want to do inside the community? Sometimes it just doesn't work. So I'm deeply appreciative of communities that do work, because you are putting in your effort, right? Like obviously I couldn't put my entirety of my effort, because as you say, I was solopreneur. I'm doing it all on my own, juggling things all on my own, and it gets difficult. So I'm genuinely appreciative of communities and spaces such as yours that help people have like the ability to connect with others and the ability to communicate in a very safe space. So I'm genuinely appreciative of that. All right, my last question to you, and this is going to be a very difficult question because we have had some amazing impactful points made during this podcast episode. What is the one last thing that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Don't be afraid. Go out, be unafraid, as a matter of fact. I'll turn that around. A lot of people, when you're coming into something from a place of fear, you're probably you're limiting yourself right away. So come at it from a, and this is a very difficult thing to do, right? But try as much as you can to turn that around and say, no, I'm coming at this from the opposite of fear. I'm coming as, as we were starting to, you're like, oh, you're getting the energy up. You're like, let's go, like this, and that's great. That's what you have to do. And to suppress, I shouldn't say suppress. I should say we all have fear and anxiety about the journey that we're on, because we don't know where it's going.
True.
So it just is natural. So try to take that fear. So be unafraid, as a matter of fact. Go out and know that you can be unafraid. You can proceed with a lot of passion. And that's really where you unlock a lot of keys. So that's what I would say. Be unafraid.
Oh, I love that a lot. And it definitely ties up to what we were speaking about earlier, about how our journey can shift and we need to adapt and we need to change. So be unafraid. Sometimes things might work, sometimes things might not, but it's all right, because again, if you are unafraid, you are ready to adapt and move through it. So thank you so much, Phil. This journey, this podcast episode was definitely something off the rails, I would say, because this was not something that I thought would come out of it, but so much stuff came out of it. Like I was genuinely like, wow, this is the thing that I work on. This is the things that I speak about. And just to find another individual who can speak about the same things with just as much passion as I do is amazing. And we come from 2 different viewpoints altogether, right? Like I come from the perspective of burnout, you come from the perspective of enabling freelancers. At the end of the day, they do kind of intertwine, but definitely it is so amazing to have someone as you be a guest on the Soul's Conquest. Deeply appreciative. Thank you so much for being on here and showing up here.
Thanks for having me. It's been an awesome experience.